Hello out there, wherever you may be listening. We are broadcasting not live from an underground bunker somewhere deep below the southeastern United States. I hope we're coming through loud and clear. This is Transmissions from the Rabbit Hole. Hello and welcome, dear friends, to the inaugural episode of Transmissions from the Rabbit Hole. I'm your host, Chris. And one of the primary goals of this podcast is going to be to highlight the similarities and consistent patterns that emerge between what might appear to be disparate paranormal phenomena. Those who study these phenomena are often very hesitant to utilize a more multidisciplinary approach for what I suspect to be a variety of reasons. But whether we're talking about ghostly apparitions or unidentified flying objects, or elusive creatures like Bigfoot, there are threads that connect these experiences. And by examining these connections, we can begin to piece together a more comprehensive understanding of the world around us. Another crucial goal of this podcast is going to be to counter what I believe to be a false narrative. That we must trust the powers that be to ever disclose any secrets about paranormal phenomena, whatever that might be. It's my belief that those in positions of power understand the profound implications that these phenomena have for our consensus reality and human ambition in general. They realize that enlightenment that could come with such disclosure, and perhaps they see it as a threat to their control. And we need to be more willing to accept the possibility that the ruling class does not want us enlightened. They may seek to misrepresent the data, to keep us in the dark, to maintain their grip on power. This just isn't just a conspiracy theory, it's a call to critically evaluate the information we're given and to question the motives behind it. With this podcast, I aim to encourage you, the listener, to not be cajoled into thinking about these phenomena in a certain way. Instead, I want to inspire you to engage your imagination, to question the status quo, and to realize that the world we live in is far more enchanted than we ever realized. Perhaps the term supernatural is a misnomer. Maybe, just maybe, nature itself is just super. So as we embark on this journey together, I ask that you keep your minds open and your curiosity alive. Let's explore the mysteries of our world with a sense of wonder and a healthy dose of skepticism. Because in the end, it's not about finding definitive answers, but about expanding our understanding and appreciating the profound mysteries that make our world so fascinating. So today we're going to embark on a mind-bending journey that I'm sure will challenge everything you think you know about reality. We've all heard stories of UFO sightings, ghostly encounters, and inexplicable psychic phenomena. But what if I told you that these seemingly disparate events might all be connected? What if they're not separate mysteries, but different facets of the same cosmic puzzle? In today's episode, we're going to flip the script. Instead of asking where these phenomena come from, we're going to ask a much bigger question. What is the nature of reality that makes these phenomena possible in the first place? We'll dive into cutting-edge physics, exploring how Einstein's block universe theory and quantum mechanics are revealing a reality far stranger than we ever imagined. We'll examine how these scientific concepts might explain everything from premonitions to ghostly time slips. But we won't stop there. We'll venture beyond conventional science and into the realm of philosophy, exploring how Bernardo Kastrup's analytic idealism offers a framework for understanding paranormal experiences. What if consciousness itself is the fundamental nature of reality? We'll challenge our understanding of human perception, examining how the limitations of our senses and the way our brains construct reality might be hiding a much weirder universe just beyond our everyday awareness. And finally, we'll look at how we can move forward in studying these phenomena, highlighting some groundbreaking research already underway, and discussing how you, our listener, and my dear friends, can contribute to this exciting field. Now, why is this so important? Because I believe understanding these phenomena could fundamentally change our view of reality, consciousness, and our place in the universe. It could provide a new paradigm for addressing the challenges that we face as a species. So, whether you're a skeptic, a believer, or somewhere in between, I invite you to keep an open mind because we're about to go down the rabbit hole, and who knows what we may find at the bottom. So, buckle up, friends. It's going to be a wild ride. So, let's start by laying out the landscape of the unexplained, or at least the terms we'll be discussing today. And we're all familiar with these, but it's worth revisiting them to set the stage for our discussion. First, UFOs. Those enigmatic and anomalous lights and objects in the sky that defy conventional explanation. From the infamous Roswell incident to the recent Pentagon UFO videos, these phenomena continue to captivate our imagination. Ghosts and hauntings. The age-old belief in spirits of the deceased lingering in our world. Whether it's a misty apparition in an old castle or unexplained footsteps in your own home, ghost stories have been with us throughout human history. Then there's poltergeist activity, which is a step beyond your average haunting. Poltergeist phenomena involve physical disturbances, objects moving on their own, loud noises, and even levitation. These cases often center around a particular person and or location. Cryptids, those elusive creatures that lurk just beyond the edge of scientific recognition. Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, the Chupacabra, these beings inhabit the twilight zone between myth and reality. Psychic phenomena, from telepathy to precognition, these abilities suggest that human consciousness might be capable of far more than we typically assume. Now, traditionally, when we talk about these phenomena, we tend to focus on their potential origins. Are UFOs extraterrestrial spacecraft? Are ghosts the spirit of the dead? Is Bigfoot an undiscovered primate species? But today, like I said, we're going to flip the script. And instead of asking where these phenomena come from, we're going to ask a much bigger, and I believe more useful question. What is the nature of reality such that these phenomena are even possible? Think about it for a moment. If even one of these phenomena are real, then it would fundamentally change our understanding of the universe. A single verifiable ghost would upend our concepts of consciousness and death. A confirmed UFO of extraterrestrial origin would revolutionize our understanding of physics and space travel. So instead of debating the specifics of each phenomenon, we should zoom out and look at the big picture. What kind of universe do we live in where these things could even exist? And what does that say about the nature of reality itself? I'd like to start with Einstein's block universe theory. Imagine the universe as a four-dimensional block, where time is just another dimension alongside the length, the width, and the height. In this view, all of time, past, present, and future, exists simultaneously. It's as if every moment of your life, from birth to death, is already laid out in this cosmic block. Now, this might sound like science fiction, but it is a serious concept in physics, and it has some fascinating implications for how we think about paranormal phenomena. Consider psychic or premonitory visions. If all of time exists at once, what if these visions of the future aren't really glimpses of the future at all? What if they're actually perceptions of events that, from our limited perspective, haven't happened yet, or maybe happened before, but in the block universe already exist and are happening now? This idea challenges our notion of causality. In our everyday experience, cause precedes effect. But in a block universe, that distinction becomes quite blurry. Everything just is. But it gets weirder, and that's where we'll start talking about quantum physics. Recent experiments are suggesting that time might not be the linear, forward marching arrow we've always assumed it to be. One of the most mind bending experiments in the field is the delayed choice quantum eraser. Without getting technical, I'll just say this experiment seems to show that a decision made in the present can affect the past. And if you Google delayed choice quantum eraser, you'll learn all you need to know. It's as if the future is reaching backwards in time to influence the past. Now, it is important to note that this doesn't mean we can send information back in time or change the past. The math still checks out, causality is preserved. But it does suggest that our common sense notions of time and cause and effect may be fundamentally flawed. Another classic experiment that challenges our understanding of reality is the double slit experiment. Again, without getting too technical, this experiment shows that particles can behave like waves, existing in multiple places at once, until they're observed. It's as if the act of observation itself collapses multiple possibilities into one single reality. And I believe what these experiments are telling us is that the nature of reality is far stranger and far more complex than we ever imagined. Our everyday experience of a solid, predictable world might be just the tip of a very weird iceberg. So, how does this relate back to our paranormal phenomena? Well, if reality itself is this malleable, this strange at its core, then suddenly things like ghosts and UFOs or psychic phenomena don't seem quite so impossible, right? Maybe what we call paranormal is just what happens when we bump up against the limits of our everyday perception. Maybe these phenomena are glimpses into the true, weird nature of reality that usually stays hidden from us. So now we're going to push beyond the boundaries of traditional physicalism and explore some truly mind bending ideas. We'll start with UFOs. We've all heard the extraterrestrial hypothesis, but what if that thinking is too narrow? What if UFOs aren't crafts from other planets, but manifestations of non human intelligence from other dimensions? Quantum physics has shown us that reality is far stranger than we imagined. The many worlds interpretation suggests that every quantum event creates multiple universes. Well, what if some advanced intelligence has found a way to navigate these parallel realities? Imagine consciousness itself as the vehicle. If consciousness is fundamental to the universe, as some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest, then perhaps these entities aren't traveling through space at all, but through consciousness itself. They might be instantiating themselves in our reality by collapsing quantum possibilities into physical form. And this could explain the often reported high strangeness of UFO encounters. the way they seem to defy our laws of physics. Perhaps they're not breaking any laws, they're just operating on a level of reality that we can barely comprehend. Now we can apply this framework to ghosts and time slips. We discussed Einstein's block universe theory, the idea that all time exists simultaneously. So, what if ghosts are not spirits of the dead, but rather glimpses of people from other points in time? Consider this: if all time exists at once, then perhaps what we call quote unquote hauntings are actually moments where the boundaries between different time periods become thin. The ghost you see walking through your living room might be a person from the year 1850 going about their day in their own time, momentarily visible in ours. This concept of thinning boundaries between realities could also explain cryptids. Bigfoot, the Loch Ness Monster, and other elusive creatures might not be undiscovered species, but beings from parallel realities that occasionally bleed into ours. Remember the double slit experiment we mentioned earlier? It showed that particles exist in a state of superposition until observed. Well, maybe cryptids exist in a similar state of superposition between realities, only collapsing into our reality when observed, which could explain why they're so rarely caught on camera. Now, I agree that does sound far fetched, but the point of this podcast and the point of these discussions is just to expand our thought process here and to think about these phenomena in a way that we haven't before. Now let's talk about residual hauntings. Those ghostly replays of past events that seem to have no awareness of present day observers. We typically think of these as recordings in the environment, but what if they're more like high energy knots in the fabric of space time? Let's consider Einstein's block universe again. If all time exists simultaneously, then perhaps traumatic or highly emotional events can create disturbances in the quantum field, areas of high energy concentration that persist across time. And if this sounds far fetched to you, I would ask you to think about the shadows that were left on walls and streets after the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The intense energy of the blast literally imprinted images onto those surfaces. What if emotional or psychic energy could do something similar, but on a quantum level? These quantum imprints might be what we perceive as residual hauntings. They're not conscious entities, but echoes of past events reverberating through the quantum fabric of reality. This framework allows us to see these phenomena not as supernatural, but as natural aspects of a universe far more complex and interconnected than we typically assume. It suggests that consciousness, time, and reality itself are far more fluid and interrelated than our everyday experience suggests. So now we're about to dive into one of the most fascinating philosophical frameworks of our time: analytic idealism, as proposed by Bernardo Kastrup. Now, this isn't just some abstract theory, it's a paradigm shift that could revolutionize our understanding of consciousness, reality, and yes, even the paranormal. So, what exactly is analytic idealism? Well, at its core, it's the idea that consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, Chris, this sounds like some new age woo woo, but hold on, because Kastrup's approach is rigorous, logical, and grounded in both philosophy and science. So we'll start by contrasting it with physicalism, the dominant worldview in science today. Physicalism posits that everything in the universe, including consciousness, can be reduced to physical processes. Your thoughts, feelings, even your sense of self, all just complex arrangements of atoms and electrical signals in your brain. Analytic idealism flips this on its head. It suggests that what we call quote unquote physical reality is actually a manifestation of a deeper, more fundamental consciousness. Kastrup calls this the mind at large, a universal field of consciousness that's the basis of all reality. Now, here's where it gets really interesting for us paranormal enthusiasts. If consciousness is fundamental, suddenly many paranormal experiences become a lot more plausible. Take telepathy, for instance. In a physicalist framework, it's really hard to explain how information could transfer between two brains without some physical medium. But if our individual minds are actually dissociated alters of a larger universal mind, telepathy becomes more like remembering something you've temporarily forgotten. Or consider near death experiences. Physicalism struggles to explain how consciousness can persist when the brain is inactive. But in analytic idealism, consciousness doesn't depend on the brain. The brain is more like a localization of the universal consciousness. Now, what's truly remarkable is that this view is gaining a lot of traction, even amongst scientists who have traditionally been staunch physicalists. The hard problem of consciousness, how subjective experience arises from objective matter, has pushed many to consider alternatives to physicalism. Analytic idealism offers an elegant solution. Consciousness doesn't arise from matter, matter arises from consciousness. Kastrup argues that this universal consciousness, the mind at large, dissociates into individual minds, much like how a person with dissociative identity disorder might split into multiple personalities. Our physical reality, then, can be thought of as a shared hallucination of these dissociated alters. If this sounds familiar to some of you versed in Eastern philosophy, then you're onto something, because analytic idealism bears striking similarities to some ancient spiritual traditions, particularly Advaita Vedanta and certain schools of Buddhism. The idea of a fundamental universal consciousness is reminiscent of the Buddhist concept of Buddha nature or the Hindu Brahman. In Zen Buddhism, for instance, there's emphasis on direct experience and the illusory nature of the separate self. These ideas resonate strongly with analytic idealism. The Zen koan, "Show me your original face before your parents were born," could be interpreted as an invitation to experience the universal consciousness beneath our individual identities. But what sets analytic idealism apart is its rigorous logical framework. Kastrup isn't asking us to take anything on faith here. He's built a philosophical system that he argues is more parsimonious and more in line with empirical evidence and more logically coherent than physicalism. Now we're going to explore the fascinating points of convergence among various paranormal phenomena. And as we dive deeper, we'll see how these seemingly disparate experiences might be different facets of the same underlying reality. So we'll start by examining some commonalities between the different phenomena. First, altered states of consciousness. Whether we're talking about UFO encounters, ghost sightings, or psychic experiences, they often occur when the witness is in an altered state. Meditation, sleep paralysis, or even extreme stress seem to bring about these contact experiences. Then there are electromagnetic anomalies. Many paranormal events are associated with unusual electromagnetic readings. And this is true for hauntings, UFO sightings, and even some cryptid encounters. One of the more fascinating commonalities to me is distortions of time and space. Experiencers often report time slowing down or speeding up or even missing time. Spatial anomalies like entering seemingly impossible spaces are also common. Then you have physical effects from UFO traces to poltergeist activity to stigmata and religious experiences. Many paranormal phenomena leave a tangible physical form of evidence. And then lastly, the transformative impact these experiences have on people. Whether it's a UFO abductee or a near death experiencer or someone who's had a profound ghostly encounter, these events often lead to significant life changes and shifts in entire belief systems. Now, how can we make sense of all these commonalities? And this is where idealism, particularly analytic idealism, as we discussed earlier, offers a potential unified explanation. If consciousness is indeed fundamental, as idealism proposes, then these phenomena could all be understood as different manifestations of consciousness interacting with itself. UFOs, ghosts, cryptids, these might not be external entities, but projections of the collective unconsciousness or intrusions from other levels of reality within the greater field of consciousness. The electromagnetic anomalies often associated with these events could be the physical expression of these consciousness interactions. Just as our thoughts correlate with measurable brain activity that you can see on an MRI, perhaps these larger consciousness events correlate with detectable electromagnetic fluctuations. The distortions of time and space make sense if we consider that our perception of time and space is a construct of consciousness. You see, in altered states or when interacting with different levels of consciousness, our usual constructs can break down. Now, let's get deeper into the role of consciousness in manifesting paranormal events. And this is where I think things get really interesting. In the idealist framework, our individual consciousness is a dissociated alter of a larger universal consciousness. Our normal everyday reality is kind of a shared hallucination that we all agree upon. But what happens when that agreement breaks down, or when we access other levels of the universal mind at large? Consider the phenomenon of tulpas in Tibetan mysticism. Tulpas are thought forms that can take on a kind of independent existence. In our framework, we might understand cryptids or even some UFOs as tulpas on a grand scale. Collective thought forms given quasi physical reality by the power of collective belief and expectation. Or think about poltergeist activity. This is often associated with adolescents undergoing emotional turmoil. If consciousness is primary, could an intense emotional states literally affect physical reality? Near death experiences and past life memories could be understood as our individual consciousness temporarily reintegrating with the larger universal mind, accessing information and experiences beyond our usual boundaries. And even the physical effects of paranormal events make sense in this framework. If physical reality is a manifestation of consciousness, then suddenly powerful conscious experiences could indeed leave physical traces. This view explains why paranormal experiences are often transformative. They represent a momentary breaking of the illusion of separateness, a peek behind the curtain of our consensus reality. And this can be traumatic and shocking for many people. It's crucial to note that this doesn't make these experiences any less real. In an idealist framework, all of reality is a manifestation of consciousness. So, your kitchen table isn't any more real or less real than a UFO or a ghost. They're just different expressions of the same underlying conscious reality. This unified explanation through idealism offers a way to take these experiences seriously without having to posit a different mechanism for every type of paranormal event. It provides a framework where the honest reports of experiencers can be respected and studied, rather than dismissed out of hand. Now, we've come to a point where I would like to examine the implications for human perception and experience. Let's start with what you may find as a startling fact, or some of you may. Our brains are actually in the business of ignoring most of the information we receive. That's right. Your brain is a master of deletion. It's constantly filtering out what it deems to be irrelevant, allowing you to focus on what it considers important or relevant. This process is happening right now as you listen to my voice, filtering out background noises, the feeling of your clothes on your skin, and maybe even the weight of your body in your chair. But what if in this process of deletion, we're missing out on aspects of reality that could explain paranormal phenomena? Consider this. Humans can only perceive a tiny fraction of the electromagnetic spectrum. We call this visible light, but it's just a sliver of what's out there. There are radio waves, X rays, gamma rays, entire realms of reality that we cannot perceive without the appropriate technology. What if some paranormal phenomena exist in these imperceptible ranges? Let's talk about how our brains construct reality. Your brain isn't passively receiving information. It's actively creating your experience of the world. It relies heavily on models it has constructed over your lifetime and even draws on evolutionary adaptations developed over thousands of years. So, when faced with ambiguous stimuli, your brain will try to fit that stimuli into these pre existing models. So, what if the high strangeness often reported in paranormal encounters is simply our brain's attempt to make sense of something it's not built to comprehend? When faced with a reality that doesn't fit its models, the brain might generate bizarre interpretations. If you've ever uh, experienced with mushrooms or LSD or DMT, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. For instance, machine elves in the DMT experience, or the often absurd details in abduction narratives, seem to be in line and consistent with a brain that is trying to make sense of something it doesn't quite comprehend. So, how do these factors play into altered states of consciousness and paranormal experiences? In altered states, whether induced by meditation, psychedelics, or extreme stress, our brain's usual filters and models can be bypassed or altered. This could potentially allow us to perceive aspects of reality that are typically filtered out. For instance, the sense of oneness, often reported in mystical experiences, could be what happens when the brain's model of a separate self is temporarily suspended. The beings encountered in DMT experiences might be our brain's attempt to model consciousness itself when the usual filters are offline. This perspective also sheds light on why paranormal experiences often occur in these liminal states. These are states, altered states, where our usual perceptual models are destabilized, potentially allowing for experiences outside of our normal range. Now let's examine how cultural and historical interpretations of the anomalous align with our idealist framework. Throughout history, humans have interpreted unusual experiences through the lens of their cultural models. Ancient Greeks saw gods and nymphs, medieval Europeans saw demons and fairies, and modern Westerners see aliens and interdimensional beings. In our idealist framework, these could all be different interpretations of the same underlying phenomena: consciousness interacting with the self in ways outside of our usual experience. The cultural models provide the imagery and the narrative, but the core experience might be universal. And this aligns beautifully with our idealist approach. If consciousness is fundamental and our physical reality is this kind of shared hallucination, then these experiences represent moments when the veil of our consensus reality thins. The specific form they take is then shaped by our individual and cultural expectations, but the underlying phenomenon is a glimpse into the larger field of consciousness from which our individual minds emerge. This framework allows us to take these experiences seriously without having to believe in a vast array of supernatural entities. It suggests that the realm of fairies, aliens, and spirits might all be aspects of the same underlying conscious reality, one that we usually can't perceive due to the limitations of our sensory system and cognitive models. So, how can we move forward with investigating paranormal phenomena in a rigorous scientific manner within this framework? Well, we can look at some of the cutting edge research already underway and discuss how you, my friends, can contribute to this fascinating field of study. So, let's talk about some of the groundbreaking work being done by researchers who are pushing the boundaries of conventional science. Uh, Names like Dr. Gary Nolan, a professor of pathology at Stanford University. He's been applying advanced neuroimaging techniques to study individuals who claim to have had encounters with non human intelligence. His work with the Soul Foundation is attempting to identify potential physiological markers associated with these experiences. Another researcher making waves is Dr. Diana Walsh Pasulka, author of my favorite book, American Cosmic. Her work explores the intersection of technology, consciousness, and UFO phenomena, bringing a fresh academic perspective to the field. And I'd be remiss if I forgot Jacques Vallée, the OG, a computer scientist and ufologist who's been investigating UFO phenomena for decades. Vallée's approach, which considers UFOs as potential manifestations of a non human consciousness rather than simply extraterrestrial spacecraft, aligns well with the idealist framework we've been discussing. So here's where you come in. Citizen science initiatives and crowdsourced data collection are becoming increasingly important within the field of paranormal research. With smartphones and the technology we have today, we all have the potential to be data collectors and researchers. And I want to emphasize something I believe is crucial. When reporting experiences, don't leave out the weird, bizarre stuff. In fact, the most bizarre, high strangeness aspects of encounters are often where some of the most interesting data lies. These details, which might seem to be too strange or embarrassing to report, could hold the key to identifying significant patterns. For example, many UFO experiencers report absurd or seemingly nonsensical details like being shown strange symbols or told to deliver bizarre messages. And instead of dismissing these as hallucinations or misperceptions, we should catalog them systematically. And we might find patterns that could tell us something profound about the nature of these experiences. That same thing goes for ghost encounters, cryptid sightings, or any other paranormal experience. The details that seem too weird to be true might be the most important. So if you have an experience, report everything, no matter how strange it might seem. Of course, this approach needs to be balanced with rigorous methodology, and we need to be open minded enough to consider unconventional possibilities, but skeptical enough to demand solid evidence. And this is a delicate balance, but it's crucial if we want to make real progress in understanding these phenomena. So here are some things, guidelines, if you will, for those of you who might be interested in conducting your own investigations. Document everything. And I would suggest use multiple methods: written notes, audio recordings, photographs, videos. The more documentation you have, the better. And within that documentation, be precise about dates, times, and locations. This information can be crucial for identifying patterns or correlations. Even if you think it's not important, it really could be. Be honest about the conditions of your experience or experiment. As we mentioned, a lot of times this contact seems to come out of altered states. Well, note that. If you were tired, stressed, or under the influence of any substance, document it. It's all relevant data. Seek corroboration when possible. Were there other witnesses? Is there any physical evidence? Things like that. Stay open minded, but maintain a healthy skepticism. Consider all possible explanations, not just the paranormal ones. And in this field, we have to almost go above and beyond trying to debunk ourselves a lot of times. So definitely consider all possible explanations, not just the paranormal ones. Share your data. There are numerous online databases and research groups collecting reports of paranormal experiences. So contributing your data could help build a larger picture of these phenomena. And remember, the goal isn't to prove or disprove the paranormal. It's to gather data, identify patterns, and hopefully inch closer to understanding the true nature of these experiences and what they might tell us about consciousness and reality itself. So, as we come to the end of this deep dive into the interconnectedness of paranormal phenomena and the nature of reality, I'd like to take a moment to recap some of the key points we've explored today. We began by identifying various paranormal phenomena: UFOs, ghosts, hauntings, poltergeists, cryptids, psychic phenomena, and then we shifted our focus from their potential origins to what we think is the bigger question: what is the nature of reality that these phenomena are even possible? Then we talked about Einstein's black universe theory and the mind bending insights of quantum physics, which suggest that time might not be linear and that our consensus reality is far stranger than we ever imagined. We explored how these concepts could explain paranormal experiences such as psychic visions or time slips. Then we examined Bernardo Kastrup's analytic idealism, which posits that consciousness is the fundamental nature of reality. This framework provides a fascinating and unified explanation for paranormal phenomena, suggesting that they are manifestations of a universal consciousness interacting with itself. Then we discussed the limitations of our sensory systems and how our brains construct reality based on models built over our lifetimes and our evolutionary history. We considered how high strangeness in paranormal encounters might be our brain's attempt to make sense of something it isn't built to comprehend. And then finally, we explored the importance of moving forward with scientific investigations and experiments, and we highlighted the work of uh, researchers like Gary Nolan and Diana Walsh Pasulka and Jacques Vallée, and encouraged citizen science initiatives and crowdsourced data collection. We emphasized the need for open mindedness and rigorous methodology in studying these phenomena. Throughout this journey, we've seen how interconnected these phenomena are and how they challenge our understanding of reality. But more importantly, we've seen how they invite us to question, explore, and expand our minds. Whether you're a scientist, a skeptic, or simply someone curious about the mysteries of the universe, I encourage you to keep questioning and exploring. The study of paranormal phenomena isn't just about understanding the unknown, it's about pushing the boundaries of our knowledge and expanding our perception of reality. In a world that often feels increasingly fragmented and chaotic, this kind of paradigm shifting exploration could be exactly what the human species needs. It invites us to see beyond the surface of our everyday experience, to recognize the deeper interconnectedness of all things, and to find meaning and wonder in the mysteries that surround us. So, dear friends, keep your minds open, your curiosity alive, and your spirit of inquiry strong. Together, we can challenge the consensus reality and perhaps in doing so, find new ways to navigate the complexities of modern life. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey down the rabbit hole. And until next time, my friends, this is Chris signing off. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember, the truth is out there, waiting to be discovered. Good night.